So one thing I've noticed a lot of people struggle with when they're trying to quit porn is these feelings of shame. Now, I've learned quite a bit about shame over the last few years. There's a podcast by Sarah Brewer, and that's really good. It actually talks about porn addiction in particular. Now, I disagree with Sarah's method overall, but when it comes to shame, I think she talks a lot of sense, and I've found that very, very useful. Now, the other person I really recommend sort of getting into is a woman called Brené Brown. Brené Brown is one of the world's biggest experts on shame. She's done loads of research into it, and I've read a few of her books, which I found really useful. So essentially, when I was in the porn addiction, I felt a lot of shame, and my nervous system got totally dysregulated. Now, shame is very different to guilt, and this is one of the things Brené Brown talks a lot about. So shame is, I am wrong. There is something wrong with my sexual desires. I am stuck in a porn addiction forever. This is just who I am. Whereas guilt is, I did something wrong. There's nothing wrong with my sexual desires, but I am in a porn addiction currently. But, it's not going to be like that forever. And I can rewire my brain and overcome this porn addiction. This is not who I am. So guilt is about you doing something wrong, whereas shame is about you being wrong. And there's a big, big distinction there. The problem with shame is it keeps people stuck in this mindset where they're fixed and limited and they can't see a way out. Whereas the amazing thing with guilt, and I know that sounds weird, but the good thing about guilt is it kind of points you in the right direction because it's saying, I did something wrong there. Maybe I can learn and change because it's not who I am. It's just that I've done something wrong. And the reason that people do something wrong is only because they haven't been taught yet to do what is right. Now, I know we could get all philosophical and talk about what's right and wrong, but I'm really just talking about for you personally. Like, for me, if I looked at porn, I would feel like I have done something wrong, but I wouldn't feel the shame. And so, we don't need to go too deep into morals and ethics, but I just want to get across this point that there's nothing wrong with you for looking at porn. That is a fact. I looked at porn for so many years and there was nothing wrong with me during that time, but so often I felt like there was something wrong with me. So we really want to overcome this shame because then that's going to open up this opportunity to change and rewire and have a growth mindset. So tip number 2, if you do watch some porn or maybe just something slightly sexual, what you need to understand is that you are actually going to want to watch more sexual content. So the reason I say this is because what happens for a lot of people, and myself included, is they'll watch something slightly sexual. Or maybe they're scrolling on Instagram and they see a model or something like that. And then they decide, you know what, I want to look at something a little bit more sexual. And then more and more and more. And what happens in addiction due to the way in which dopamine essentially works, it is the molecule of more. You are going to want more. So the moment you look at something sexual, that doesn't satiate that sexual desire. Instead, it just creates more and more desire. Those urges are going to get more and more intense. And so what I say to anyone who I work with is you want to cut this out entirely. We don't want to just try and moderate the use because moderation is not going to work. It's just going to lead to you wanting more and more porn, and that's how you end up getting into categories which you're definitely not proud of because your brain then becomes desensitized and you seek out more and more novel sexual content. And I really think looking at certain categories is what causes people a huge amount of shame. But if you can realize that actually the moment you look at some sexual content, that's going to create a lot more desire to look at more sexual content, then you can know, you know what, I need to just cut this out entirely. And that's going to be a really good way to not get onto those more extreme categories that just don't align with who you are or your values. And it is 100% possible to cut porn out completely. It just does, it requires some work. It requires changing your thought patterns so you can change how you feel and change how you act. Tip number 3. Recognize that this is a problem that can be changed and it doesn't define who you are. So quite similar to the last 2 points, but essentially you can rewire addictive neural pathways. Having a porn addiction doesn't define who you are. It's actually nothing really to do with who you are. You just happen to live in a time zone, a world where you've been susceptible to getting these addictive neural pathways. And so your brain has changed, and now it's time to reverse that and rewire it. And that's 100% possible for everyone watching this, whether you've been watching it for 1 year, for 50 years, however long. We've got a client at the moment who has just joined recently, actually, and he said that nothing had really made sense up until now, and he'd been in a porn addiction for over 40 years. It's a long time. So I feel really proud to help him out, and hopefully we'll continue to help more people out as well. So thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like more help in terms of learning the Beyond Compulsion method, which was taught to me by Mary Paulus, who's worked in addiction recovery since 1990, there is a link in the description. Hopefully that will get you started and on the right path towards permanent mental freedom. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.